Glad to come your way once again. Today, Dr. Mensa Otabil talks about Deborah, a mother in Zion. Please pay attention to this message. Keep watching.
So my message today is titled, Deborah, a mother in Zion. I have replaced Israel with Zion to give her a role and a place in the New Testament. Deborah, a mother in Zion, or a mother in the church, a mother in the house of the Lord. Judges chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. Judges chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. And this is what it says in Judges chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the life of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. And she would sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the mountains of Ephraim. And the children of Israel will come up to her for judgment. And that is how the Bible introduces her to us. And in those two verses, a few things are said about who this woman Deborah is. Her name is mentioned, and certain other things are mentioned about her. And I just want to run through them with us as we begin our message. The first is her name. Her name is Deborah. And the name could have been derived from several Hebrew words. From another root, it means a honeybee. A honeybee. And another root says to speak. So Deborah, depending on which root you are looking at, could mean a honeybee. And if that is her word, her name, then it means it denotes a wise person, an industrious person, but also a person who can fight back. And then if it is to speak, then it fits into her mission, which the Bible describes her to be. So Deborah could mean a honeybee or to speak. Now there are three descriptions that are given about Deborah in the passage. The first is her spiritual gift. Her spiritual gift. She is a prophetess. She was God's voice to the nation. And she spoke and prophesied to the nation of Israel. So her spiritual gift, she's a woman with a spiritual gift. The second you see about her is her domestic role. She was a wife, the wife of Lapidoth. So Deborah was not only a gifted woman, but she was also a person in a relationship, a wife to a man. And the man's name is put out there, although not much is heard about him after that. And then the third thing you hear or we see about Deborah is her political office. Her political office or professional role. She's a judge. She's the highest ranking citizen of Israel at this time. Now, if you know your Bible well, this is the period in Israel's time when they were ruled by judges. This is before they were ruled by kings. And Deborah is a judge. So if you would look at it in context, she's the king. She's the leader of the nation. Just like the judges like Gideon and Samson and others would come and be judges. And most of the judges were just warriors and military leaders. Only two judges were prophets and judges. And that is Deborah and Samuel. Samuel was the last judge of Israel. And he was a prophet and a judge. And that is about the same role that Deborah is playing. She's a prophetess and she is a judge. So she has a spiritual calling a spiritual gift, and she also holds a political office and still function well in the house of Lapidot. So it would appear that Deborah was a woman who knew how to balance her life well. Balance her home life, balance her spiritual gift, and balance her professional role as a judge in the nation of Israel. And there are women like that in our world today, and I pray that she would be a role model to you if you are a woman. Now, Deborah occupied a very unique place. At the time she came into office, Israel was in a crisis. The Canaanites have taken over Israel. Because if you read the book of Judges, you would know that many times the children of Israel will do something bad, and then some group or the other will come to their land and invade them, and then they will cry to God, and God will raise a judge. The judge will deliver them. There will be peace for about 40 years or 70 years, and then they go back to apostasy, and then God raises a judge. So at this time, the nation has sinned. The Canaanites are ruling them and mistreating them, and this is when Deborah rises. So she rises in a time of crisis. Now I want you to consider the world that she lived in, and it's in Judges chapter 5 verses 6 to 9. Judges chapter 5 verses 6 to 9. Now in Judges chapter 5, Deborah is singing a song. This is after she had led Israel to defeat the Canaanites. But in singing the song, she tells us the kind of situation she met. So Judges chapter 5 verses 6 to 9. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were deserted, and the travelers walked along the byways. Village life ceased. It ceased in Israel until I, Deborah, arose a mother in Israel. They chose new gods. Then there was war in the gates. Not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with the rulers of Israel who offered themselves willingly with the people. Bless the Lord. So Deborah is telling us the condition she came to meet. She didn't meet the best of conditions. She didn't come into office when the previous government had left a lot of money. Things were in a bad situation, and she comes into the leadership of Israel. There are four things I want you to pay attention to from her psalm or her poetry. The first thing is, Deborah tells us that at the time she came on the scene, there was a lot of fear. She says that the highways were deserted. Travelers walked on the byways, and the reason was because the Canaanites terrorized the travelers. So when Deborah came into office as a judge, the Canaanites had seized the roads, all the major highways of Israel by which they would go and trade with other nations. The Canaanites controlled it. So people couldn't go and purchase commodities. Businesses were collapsed. Nobody could go out. They had to use the byways. They had to use long routes to go out and do their business. And the reason was because the Canaanites had taken over the business routes of Israel. And there is so much fear in the life of the people. So that's the first thing you would notice, that there is fear in the nation, and the Canaanites have taken over the trade routes. The second thing that Deborah says about her is, she says village life had ceased. That means there was despair, there was discouragement. There was no life in the communities. The towns of Israel were in disarray. There was hunger. There was deprivation. Even children could not play happily in the villages, in the towns. Village life had ceased. The elderly had stopped sitting at the city gates, which was where they would normally sit to deliberate about matters of state. Village life had ceased. So there is fear, there is despair. And the third thing, which is very serious, there is idolatry. In the midst of this, the people chose new gods. The nation is in apostasy. Spiritual decay. As a matter of fact, it is this spiritual decay that brought in the Canaanites. So there is fear, there is despair, there is idolatry, apostasy. And the fourth thing that Deborah talks about, she says that there is war in the gates. War in the gates speaks of conflicts. Conflicts close at war, at home. Now, if she said there was war in the field, it would mean that the wars they were fighting were afar off. They go out to fight. But she says there's war at the gate. That means that the Canaanites had brought the battle home to them. And not only at the gate, at the entrance of the gate, but the people themselves, the Israelites, were at war one with another. The nation is in disarray. People are fighting one another. People are destroying one another. Canaanites are fighting them, and they are fighting themselves. So this is the world of Deborah. There is fear, there is despair, there is idolatry, there is conflict. The people are fighting themselves, fighting each other. Canaanites are fighting them. And she says it is in this circumstance that God called her. So let's look at her response. Deborah said, I arose a mother in Israel. I arose a mother in Israel. In this conflict situation, in this idol worship situation, in this fearful situation, I arose as a mother in Israel. Two things there to notice about her is awareness and initiative. Deborah was aware of herself. She was aware of the situation facing the nation, and she took the initiative. I arose. I arose. She didn't sit down. She didn't add to the problem. She determined, I'm going to do something about this problem. I arose a mother in Israel. May God touch Deborahs of today, who in the midst of chaos, hopelessness, despair, conflict, fights, will arise as mothers in the house of the Lord. You know, in this church, we call the women who are about 50 mothers of Zion. This is where I got the idea from. A mother of Zion is a Deborah. Is a woman who comes into a difficult situation but doesn't sit in it, but rises. And that situation may be a situation in your home. You don't sit in it, you rise. It may be a situation in your family. You don't sit in it, you rise. It may be a situation in the nation. You don't sit in it, you rise. Deborah said, I arose. And I like that. It is her action. She didn't even say God raised me up. She didn't say the people of Israel raised me up. She didn't say the people came and said, Deborah, Mrs. Lapidot, can you come and lead us? No, she says, I arose. She took charge. We are looking for Deborahs who know how to rise, who know how to resist the situation they find themselves in, who don't just sit and complain that everything is gone bad, but who are able to arise. Somebody say, I am Deborah. Not the men. Being a mother in Israel or a mother in Zion is not about age. Neither is it just about joining a group. Because, many times we want to join a group. It's good to join a group. But Deborah didn't join a group. She arose, taking personal responsibility, rising up to say, I am of age and I will do something about this problem. I arose, a mother in Zion. We don't know whether Deborah had any natural children, because the passage doesn't talk about it, just talks about her husband Lapidoth. Doesn't say whether she had children or not. It's quite instructive because looking at the way records go in the Bible, if she had children, most likely it will be noted. But, we can't make a big case out of it. So, if she did have children, then Deborah saw herself not only as a mother of her children, but a mother of a nation, a mother of a community, a mother of a society. If she didn't have children, it didn't stop her from mothering the whole nation. So for women who have children, you have to look beyond your children. For women who have no children, you have to look beyond your situation. Because for Deborah, children or no children did not stop her from becoming a mother to the nation. A mother in Israel, a mother in Zion, a mother in the church. And in a church like ours, we need a lot of Deborahs who rise up and do something about the calling God has given to them and the opportunities that God has given to them. So I'm going to look at five things that mothers in Zion do. Mothers in Zion. What do they? And this goes to every Christian woman who is grown both spiritually and in age. Actually, 4 things, not 5. You may not be very old, but there are younger women and men who look up to you. And that's the interesting thing about Deborah. She was leading both men and women. She was leading the nation. So what did Deborah do and what can we learn from her? The first thing that mothers in Zion do is that they settle disputes. They end conflicts. This is the first thing we see Deborah doing. She sat under a palm tree and settled matters between the people. The people will come to her and she will settle the matters. And why was that important? Because Israel had a big enemy, the Canaanites. But the bigger enemy was the people themselves who were fighting one another. If you cannot unite the people, they cannot win the bigger battle. And Deborah decided, I'm going to end the disputes in Israel. So she started patching people. Now, I have to say this for women, that most women in most families are the glue that hold the family together. They are the glue that hold the family together. Everybody will say that. I wouldn't say everybody, but most people will say that about their mother. My mother was the one who held us together. My mother was the one who kept the family together. However, when women move outside of the domestic situation, that ability to hold everything together seems to disappear. And instead, they become those who separate others. Sometimes with the very, very powerful gift of communication. powerful gift of communication. They talk, and in talking, they separate. So most times you find when women are together, they don't work together. There's too much disputes, too much conflict, too much quarrels. And unfortunately, even sometimes as they grow older, it gets worse. Where you expect that there will be the rallying point, the mother figure that everybody rallies around, they become the one saying, do you know what this one is doing? Hey, don't talk to this one. Hey, don't do that. And before long, instead of doing what Deborah did, settling disputes, they are creating disputes. But it will not be so with you. You are a Deborah, one who holds the nation, the church, the community, the family together. Sometimes women are able to hold their children together when the children are young. Then as the children grow older, they're not able to hold it together. And sometimes, unfortunately, sadly, they divide the children. Or you put them into a group and that group can't work. But that's not Deborah. If you are a mother in Zion, and I'm not talking about mothers in Zion of ICGC, I'm talking about mothers in Zion as a woman who understands her gifting, her office, and her roles in life, then you must rise. And the first thing you do as a mother in Zion is that you learn to settle disputes and bring people together. Not separate people. Bring people together. You have the gift. You have the ability. You have kept families together for years. All of us can testify. But for our mothers, our lives, our homes will not be together. Take that gift and use it at the national level. Take that gift, use it at the church level. Take that gift, use it at the larger group level. That's what a mother in Zion does. They settle conflicts. Second thing you would notice that Deborah did is that they inspire God's people. She began her victory song in Judges chapter 5 verse 2. He says, when leaders lead in Israel, when the people willingly offer themselves, bless the Lord. Deborah inspired people to willingly offer themselves. People stop thinking about me and my, and everybody says, let's come together. Let's work together. Let's fight the Canaanites. How did it happen? Because this woman was able to bring people together and create an atmosphere where there was voluntary commitment to service and to the uses of gifts. A Deborah does not look at somebody who is serving hard in the house of the Lord and say, is that your father's church? Is that for you alone? Why are you doing it as if it's for you alone? No, Deborah says, go ahead and volunteer and work for God and give your best. That's what she's doing. When leaders lead, the people willingly offer themselves. Deborah came in and took a fractured nation, and put it together. And now people are ready to enlist into the army of Israel. People are ready to take up weapons and go and fight. She says when she came, nobody was ready to fight. There was even no ammunition for the people to fight. But she changed all of that. The people had a heart to work. May God use you as a Deborah, as a mother in Zion, that wherever you go, you inspire people to love God. You inspire people to serve God. You inspire people to give their best to the Lord. My wife always tells me that one of the people who inspired her in this church most to give all she had was Mrs. Hammond. And she will come to church and see this old woman giving everything. And she decides, when I grow up, I want to be like this woman. Give my heart. That's the pastor's wife, inspired by a member of the congregation. That means you can be a Deborah. You don't need title and position to inspire people to give their hearts, their service to the house of the Lord. That's what Deborah did. She got the people to give themselves to the Lord. And the third thing Deborah did, she motivated a new leader called Barak. Mothers in Zion motivate new leaders. In a time of crisis, that's what Deborah did. She called for Barak and reminded him of God's calling on his life. And Deborah reminded Barak and said in chapter 4 of Judges, verse 6 to 8, then she sent and called for Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, has not the Lord God of Israel commanded, go and deploy troops at Mount Tabor? Take with you 10,000 men of the sons of Naphtali and of the sons of Zebulun, and against you I will deploy Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude at the river Kishon, and I will deliver him into your hand. He says, she calls for Barak. And the way that she speaks to Barak, it's as if Barak is a very reluctant man. He's one of those sit down look men. They sit and look. They don't want to get involved. But God had a plan for Barak. But Barak is afraid. Barak is afraid. And Deborah said, go and get that army general Barak for me. General Barak comes and says, has God not been talking to you, Barak, that you must deploy troops? Now get away and deploy the troops and let's go face the Canaanites. Because God says, I will deliver Sisera, the commander of the Canaanites, into your hand. This is a woman who dares people to jump to their duty. When they see a gift they don't like, they wouldn't let the gift die. They won't see potential and let it go rotting. They won't see a person with a destiny and just leave him be. They interfere in people's lives to inspire them to become all that God wants them to be. They raise leaders. The Deborahs are not afraid to raise new leaders, to raise younger women, to raise younger men. If you are a true mother in Zion, your greatest joy is to see younger people coming up after you, doing great things, inspiring, and you motivating them. You don't get threatened because a young person showed up. You get excited because the youth are now on fire for the Lord. And the final thing about Deborah is that she got involved in doing God's work. She got involved in the battle. Because Barak said to her, if you will go with me, then I will go. But if you do not go with me, I will not go. Then she said, I will surely go with you. She's not a soldier. She's not an army general. The army general says, Madam President, Madam Judge, Madam Lapidot, I know I have the arms, but your courage is what I need. And if you're going with me, I will go. If you don't go, I am an afraid man. I'm going nowhere. And Deborah says, I will go on the battleground with you. She's not trained as a soldier, but in that battle, she went as a foot soldier of Israel. She got involved in the work. And of course, God gave victory to Israel. Deborah, a prophetess, a wife, and a judge who rose up in a time of crisis and turned the tide of history. And I pray that on this Mother's Day, there will be a new generation of Deborahs. Maybe in our national life, When things are down in our nation, you will rise up. Maybe in your office where things are down, you will rise up. Wherever you operate, you're not just going to join the people who complain about the problem. You will arise as a Deborah, as a mother in Zion, as God's person, and you will go and do exploits.
The core scripture was taken from Judges chapter 4, verse 4 to 5. Deborah was a prophetess, a wife, and lastly, she was a judge. She was a woman who knew how to balance her life well. When Deborah came into office, there was fear in the highways. The people were in despair, which means village life ceased. And lastly, the people chose new gods, and there was a lot of idolatry. There was war in the gates, which means there were a lot of conflicts. Deborah was aware of the situation on ground, and she took initiative. For women who have children should look beyond their own children, and women without children should look beyond their situation. For Deborah, children or no children did not stop her from becoming the mother of all nations. 4 things mothers in Zion do for every woman. 1. Mothers of Zion settle disputes and bring people together. 2. Mothers of Zion inspire God's people. 3. Mothers of Zion motivate new leaders. 4. Mothers of Zion get involved in doing God's work. We believe every woman watching this video will be like Deborah in every aspect of life. Thank you so much for your time. Please do well to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, do not forget to share this video with your friends and loved ones. Also, remember to visit Pastor Mensa Otabil's YouTube channel for more of his videos. Stay blessed.